I never expected to see Daniel Green again, certainly not stepping out of a sleek black Tesla as I hurried through the rain toward the rundown community center where I worked. 12 years had passed since that summer when we were 17, but I recognized him instantly. The same sharp jawline, now accentuated by a perfectly trimmed beard. The same intense eyes that had once looked at me like I was his entire world. But the designer suit and confidence he wore now belonged to someone else entirely, Daniel Green, tech billionaire and philanthropist. The man whose company's massive donation I was about to pitch for. The man who had disappeared from my life without a single word, leaving only a hastily scribbled note that said, "I'm sorry, Eliza. I can't explain now. Please forgive me someday." As our eyes locked across the rain-soaked parking lot, his widened in shock. He knew exactly who I was. And in that moment, I realized with absolute certainty that whatever explanation he was about to give me for vanishing 12 years ago was going to shatter everything I believed about my past, and perhaps my future. If you're already intrigued by Eliza and Daniel's unexpected reunion, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories of lost love, second chances, and life-changing secrets. Your support helps us bring these emotional journeys to life, and believe me, you won't want to miss what happens next in this story of buried truths and unexpected revelations. I stood frozen as Daniel approached, the rain plastering my hair to my face. His expression shifted from shock to something more complex, hope mixed with dread. "Eliza?" His voice was deeper than I remembered but still achingly familiar. "Is that really you?" I should have been professional. Should have smiled politely and pretended we were strangers. Instead, 12 years of hurt surged through me. "Funny, I was about to ask if that's really you," I said, clutching my presentation folder against my chest like a shield. "But I guess I should call you Mr. Green now." The community center director, Mrs. Patel, emerged from the building with an umbrella. "Ms. Bennett. Mr. Green. Please, come inside out of this dreadful weather." Daniel's eyes never left mine. "You work here?" "I'm the grant coordinator," I said stiffly. "Your foundation's donation would fund our youth technology program for the next 5 years. Understanding dawned on his face. "You're E. Bennett. The one who wrote the proposal." "The very same." I turned and walked toward the building, mentally reciting the center's statistics to steady myself. 25 dedicated staff. 300 at-risk youth served annually. 68% improvement in graduation rates. Not, my first love left without explanation and became a billionaire while I struggled through college alone. Not, I cried myself to sleep for months. Not, I never truly got over him. The meeting was excruciating. I delivered my presentation flawlessly, discussing budget allocations and expected outcomes, all while avoiding Daniel's intense gaze. Mrs. Patel and the board members were oblivious to the electric tension between us. "This is precisely the kind of initiative the Green Foundation supports," Daniel said when I finished. "Innovative, community-based, with measurable impacts." "Then we look forward to your decision," I replied professionally, gathering my materials. Mrs. Patel beamed. "Perhaps Mr. Green would like a tour of our facilities before departing?" Before I could invent an excuse, Daniel nodded. "I'd appreciate that very much. Would Ms. Bennett be available to show me around? I have some technical questions about the program implementation." And just like that, I was trapped alone with the ghost who had haunted my dreams for over a decade. We walked in uncomfortable silence through the center's hallways, past art rooms and computer labs where teenagers were engaged in afternoon activities. Daniel greeted each student warmly, asking genuine questions about their projects. "You're good with them," I observed reluctantly. "Technology saved my life," he said quietly. "I want it to save others." I stopped walking. "Is that what happened when you disappeared? Technology saved you?" Daniel glanced around at the bustling hallway. "Eliza, I know I owe you an explanation. But not here." He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This is my personal number. Please call me. Tonight, if possible." Why would I do that? I asked, even as I took the card. Because what I need to tell you doesn't just affect me. It affects you too. His voice dropped lower. It always has. I stared at him, suddenly cold despite the building's warmth. What is that supposed to mean? It means I didn't leave because I stopped loving you, he said, eyes intense with an emotion I couldn't name. I left because someone gave me a choice, disappear forever or watch you lose everything your family had worked for. Before I could process this bombshell, Mrs. Patel rounded the corner. Ah, there you are. Mr. Green, your assistant called. Your next appointment has been moved up. Daniel never broke eye contact with me. Call me, Eliza. Please. That night, I paced my small apartment, Daniel's card burning a hole in my palm. My cat, Fitzgerald, watched with judgmental yellow eyes as I picked up my phone for the 20th time. This is ridiculous, I told Fitzgerald. It was 12 years ago. Ancient history. But it wasn't, and we both knew it. Every relationship I'd had since Daniel had collapsed under the weight of his ghost. How could I move on when I never understood why he left? At midnight, I finally called. Eliza. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. Thank you for calling. I'm not promising anything, I said immediately. I just want the truth. I understand. Can we meet somewhere private? What I need to tell you, it's complicated. I thought of my messy apartment, my work clothes draped over chairs, the cheap wine in my fridge. There's a 24-hour diner near me. Marlowe's on 8th Street. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The diner was nearly empty at that hour, just a few night shift workers and an elderly man reading yesterday's newspaper. I chose a booth in the back, ordered coffee, and waited. When Daniel arrived, he'd changed from his expensive suit to jeans and a simple gray sweater that reminded me more of the boy I'd known. He slid into the booth across from me, declined the waitress's offer of coffee, and placed a worn leather journal on the table between us. I've imagined this conversation 1,000 different ways, he began, voice low and strained. I never found a version that didn't sound insane or make me look like either a coward or a fool. Try the truth, I suggested. Daniel pushed the journal toward me. This was my father's. I found it after he died, 3 months ago. I didn't touch it. I remember when your dad passed away. It was in the news. I'm sorry. Don't be. He's the reason I disappeared from your life. Daniel's jaw tightened. Did you ever wonder why my family moved to your town that summer? I frowned. Your father got a job at the hospital. Chief of surgery. That's what we told everyone. The truth is, we were hiding. Daniel took a deep breath. My father wasn't just a surgeon, Eliza. He was a whistleblower about to expose massive Medicare fraud at his previous hospital. The people he was about to implicate were powerful and dangerous. They threatened him, threatened our family. The government placed us in witness protection until the trial. The coffee cup trembled in my hand. Witness protection? But your name? We kept our first names to make the transition easier for me and my younger sister. Our last name was changed from Gallo to Green. I shook my head, trying to process this. But what does this have to do with us? With you leaving? Daniel's eyes darkened with pain. The summer we fell in love was supposed to be temporary. We were scheduled to leave after the trial. But then I fell in love with you, and I couldn't imagine leaving. I was planning to tell you everything, to ask you to wait for me. His hands clenched into fists on the table. Then they found us. Who found you? The people my father was testifying against. They didn't know exactly where we were, but they had narrowed it down. And they started investigating everyone we had contact with. Daniel's voice grew hoarse. Including your family. A chill ran through me as I remembered my parents' struggling local bookstore, our modest home, my college dreams that hinged on scholarships. 2 days before I disappeared, a man approached me after school. He showed me photos of you, your house, your parents at their store. He said if I didn't cut all ties and leave town immediately, your parents would be implicated in a tax fraud scheme they'd fabricated. They would lose everything. That's why you left. I whispered, my voice barely audible. To protect my family? Daniel nodded, his eyes haunted. I wasn't allowed to tell you anything. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just that note. We left that night for a new location. I stared at him, memories reshuffling themselves like cards. But the trial ended. Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you find me after it was safe? Because it was never truly safe, Daniel said, tapping the journal. My father's testimony put several people in prison, but not everyone involved was convicted. He lived in fear for years, always looking over his shoulder. Always warning me to stay hidden, to protect our new identities. He hesitated. And I was afraid. Afraid you'd never forgive me for leaving. Afraid you'd moved on. Afraid of bringing danger back into your life. The waitress refilled my coffee. When she left, I finally asked the question burning inside me. So why now? Why are you telling me this now? Daniel opened the journal and removed a sealed envelope with my name written on it. Because of this. My father wrote this letter to you before he died. In his final days, he was consumed with regret about what happened, about the sacrifices everyone made, including you. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. I don't understand. Neither did I, until I read his journal. Eliza. Daniel leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. The threat against your family was real. But my father knew something else, something he never told me until he wrote it in this journal. Something about your family's past that connects to all of this in ways I never imagined. I stared at the envelope, suddenly afraid of its contents. What are you saying? I'm saying you should read his letter. And then decide if you want to hear the rest. Daniel stood, placing a card beside my coffee cup. I'm staying at the Four Seasons downtown. Room 1542. When you've read it, if you want to talk more, I'll be waiting. He walked out of the diner, leaving me alone with a letter that promised to unravel everything I thought I knew about my past. The envelope felt impossibly heavy as I carried it back to my apartment. I sat on my couch, Fitzgerald curled beside me, staring at my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Part of me wanted to burn it, to pretend this night had never happened. But the larger part, the part that had never stopped wondering, needed to know. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. Dear Eliza. You don't know me, though we nearly became family once. I am Daniel's father, Richard Green, formerly Gallo, and by the time you read this, I will have passed away. My son believes I am writing this letter out of deathbed regret, and perhaps that is part of it. But the larger truth is that I am writing because it is finally safe to do so, and because you deserve to know why the young man who loved you so completely was torn from your life. Daniel believes he left to protect your family from fabricated charges that would have destroyed them financially. This is partially true. What he doesn't know, what I couldn't tell him then, is that the threat was more personal than financial. Your parents, Thomas and Margaret Bennett, are not who you believe them to be. I gasped, nearly dropping the letter. My parents? The most ordinary, bookish people imaginable? Before they opened their bookstore and settled in Vermont, your parents worked for the same hospital network where I discovered the Medicare fraud. Your mother was not an English teacher as she claimed, but a financial analyst who first noticed the accounting discrepancies. Your father was not always a literature lover but a hospital administrator who secretly gathered evidence and passed it to me. They left 2 years before we did, establishing new identities with the help of federal marshals. They were the first whistleblowers, Eliza. I was merely following the trail they had begun. When the threats came against Daniel for his relationship with you, it wasn't just about hurting our family. The people behind the fraud had finally connected the dots between your parents' disappearance and the ongoing investigation. They would have used your parents' real identities to destroy them and invalidate years of evidence gathering. I made the heartbreaking decision to separate you and Daniel without explanation because the truth was too dangerous for either of you to know. Your parents agreed, though I know it caused them immense pain to see you suffering. Now that the principal architects of the fraud are dead or imprisoned, and I am joining them in death, though hopefully not in the same destination, the danger has passed. Your parents may have already told you some of this history. If not, please understand they kept it from you out of love and protection, just as I kept Daniel from you. If there is any light in this dark story, it is that there is no longer any reason for you and Daniel to remain apart. Whether friendship or something more awaits you, at least let it be your choice this time. With deepest regrets and hopes for your future. Richard Gallo Green. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking more violently with each reading. My parents, whistleblowers? Our entire life in Vermont a carefully constructed fiction? I grabbed my phone and called my mother, despite the late hour. Eliza? She answered groggily. Is everything all right? Mom, my voice cracked. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Did you and Dad ever work for Northeastern Medical Group before I was born? The silence on the other end was deafening. How did you? She finally whispered. Eliza, where are you? Your father and I need to speak with you in person. I'm with Daniel Green, I lied, needing to gauge her reaction. Or should I say, Daniel Gallo? I heard her sharp intake of breath, then muffled sounds as she presumably woke my father. When she returned to the phone, her voice was clear and alert. Stay where you are. We're coming to you. This isn't a conversation for the phone. Mom, just tell me if it's true. Another pause. Yes, she finally said. It's true. All of it. We'll explain everything when we see you. After we disconnected, I sat in stunned silence. Then I texted Daniel, I read the letter. My parents confirmed it's true. They're coming here now. His response was immediate, do you want me to come to you? Or would you prefer space? I stared at his message, conflicted. Part of me wanted to face my parents alone, to process this earth-shattering revelation without his presence complicating things further. But another part recognized that Daniel was as much a victim of these secrets as I was. Come, I texted back. We should hear this together. My parents arrived first, looking both older and more alert than they had when I'd visited them last month. They hugged me tightly, my mother's eyes already brimming with tears. We were going to tell you, she said immediately. After Richard passed away, we started discussing how and when to explain everything. 12 years, I said, my voice hollow. I spent 12 years thinking Daniel abandoned me, that what we had meant nothing. We couldn't tell you, my father said, his gentle voice strained. The people threatening us would have gone after anyone who knew the truth. Including you. A knock at the door signaled Daniel's arrival. The moment my father opened the door, recognition flashed across his face. You look just like Richard, he said, extending his hand. I'm Thomas Bennett. Daniel Green, Daniel replied, shaking his hand. His eyes found mine across the room, questioning whether his presence was welcome. I gave a small nod. For the next 2 hours, my parents filled in the gaps of a history I'd never known existed. How they had discovered millions in fraudulent Medicare claims being processed through their hospital network. How the administrators involved had ties to organized crime. How they'd worn wires, gathered documents, and eventually fled with federal assistance when the danger became too great. When the Gallos moved to town, we had no idea they were connected to our case, my mother explained. Not until Richard recognized your father at the grocery store. We had already testified and entered witness protection by then, my father added. We thought the worst was behind us. Then I met Eliza, Daniel said quietly. My mother's eyes softened. You were inseparable that summer. We were concerned at first, worried that any close connection might somehow expose us. But you made our daughter so happy. When did you know you had to separate us? I asked, the old pain rising fresh in my chest. My parents exchanged looks. When a man approached her father at the bookstore, my mother said. He asked very specific questions about our history, mentioned our former names. That same week, Richard told us his family had been directly threatened. Daniel leaned forward. My father's journal mentioned a specific threat against Eliza. What was it? My father's face darkened. They threatened to kidnap her. To use her as leverage to make us and Richard recant our testimonies. I felt the blood drain from my face. Daniel reached for my hand instinctively, and I didn't pull away. So you all decided Daniel should disappear, I said. Without explanation. Without giving me any choice. You were 17, my mother said gently. We were trying to protect you. It nearly destroyed me, I whispered. Daniel's hand tightened around mine. It nearly destroyed us both, he corrected. I spent years looking over my shoulder, pushing people away before they got too close. Building my company became the only thing that mattered because it was the only thing that couldn't be taken from me. My father studied Daniel with newfound respect. Green technologies. You built something remarkable. I built it thinking of Eliza, Daniel admitted, his eyes never leaving mine. Every innovation, every success, I always wondered what you would think, if you would be proud. I read about you sometimes, I confessed. In business magazines. Tech journals. And I drove by your parents' bookstore whenever I was anywhere near Vermont, Daniel said. Just to feel close to you, to make sure they were okay. My mother wiped away tears. All these years wasted. Not wasted, my father corrected her. We survived. We all survived. As dawn broke outside my apartment windows, my parents prepared to leave. They embraced Daniel, apologizing again for their role in our separation. We're staying at the Hilton downtown for a few days, my father said. We have more to discuss, but perhaps you two need some time first. After they left, Daniel and I sat in silence, processing the weight of everything we'd learned. 12 years of secrets, lies, and missed opportunities spread between us like an uncrossable chasm. What happens now? I finally asked. Daniel's expression was cautious but determined. That depends on you, Eliza. I've never stopped loving you. But I understand if too much time has passed, if too much damage has been done. I don't know what I feel, I admitted. Relief that you didn't just abandon me. Anger that I was kept in the dark. Grief for all the years we lost. I understand, he said, rising to leave. Take all the time you need. I'll be in town until the end of the week, finalizing the grant for the community center. As he reached the door, I found myself standing, unwilling to watch him walk away again. Daniel, wait. He turned, hope flaring in his eyes. I need time, I said. But I don't want to lose you again. Not when we finally know the truth. A tentative smile touched his lips. How about we start with coffee? Tomorrow? No pressure, no expectations. Just two people getting reacquainted. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself with how true it was. The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop early, nervously checking my appearance in the reflective glass of a nearby storefront. I'd changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on a simple blue dress that made me feel confident. Daniel arrived precisely on time, carrying a small gift bag. I hope this isn't too forward, he said, handing it to me as we sat down. But I saved something from that summer. I think it belongs to you now. Inside the bag was a small wooden box carved with intricate patterns. I recognized it immediately. I had given it to Daniel the night before he disappeared, filled with handwritten notes about our future plans. You kept this? All these years? He nodded. It went with me everywhere. Every city, every new beginning. It reminded me what I was fighting for, what I hoped to return to someday. I opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside were the notes, yes, but also photographs I'd never seen. Daniel and me at the lake. At the summer festival. Laughing together on his parents' porch. Your father took these, Daniel explained. He gave them to me before he died. Said he'd been saving them for when it was finally safe. I traced our young, happy faces with my fingertip. We were just kids. We were, Daniel agreed. But what I felt for you wasn't childish, Eliza. It was the most real thing in my life. Over coffee that stretched into lunch, we began the delicate process of bridging the 12-year gap between us. I told him about college, my struggle to find meaningful work, eventually landing at the community center where I felt I could make a difference. He shared the loneliness of his journey from scared teenager to driven entrepreneur, building his company from a dorm room startup to a technology empire. How his sister had been his only confidant, the only one who understood what they'd lost. The foundation was my way of making something good from something painful, he explained. Using my success to help kids who feel trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Days turned into weeks. Coffee became dinners, then long walks through the city. I introduced him to my friends, who were skeptical but warming to the extraordinary story of our past. He showed me his local offices, where he was developing educational technology for underserved communities. My parents returned to Vermont, but not before many long conversations about our shared history. There were still moments of anger, of grief for what might have been, but healing had begun. 1 month after our reunion, Daniel invited me to dinner at his temporary apartment overlooking the city. I have something to show you, he said, leading me to a table covered with blueprints. The Green Foundation's next project. The plan showed a beautiful community complex with classrooms, technology labs, art studios, and family support services. It's amazing, I said, studying the details. Where will it be built? That depends on you, he replied, suddenly nervous. I was thinking Vermont. Near your parents' bookstore. But only if. If what? If you'd consider coming with me. Daniel took my hands in his. I know it's soon. I know we're still finding our way back to each other. But my lease here ends next month, and I need to decide where to go next. For the first time in my life, I can choose freely, without looking over my shoulder. I stared at him, at this man who was both achingly familiar and newly discovered. Are you asking me to move with you? I'm asking if Vermont might be a place where we could both build something new. You could direct the community center there, if you wanted. Or we could find something else together. All I know is that I don't want to lose you again, Eliza. The offer was breathtaking in its simplicity and its complexity. A chance to return to the place where everything began. A chance to create a new story together. I can't just leave my job, my apartment, my life here, I said, though part of me wanted to say yes immediately. I understand, Daniel said, disappointment flickering across his face. It was just an idea. We can figure out something else. No, I need time. To think about it properly. To make sure we're not rushing into something because we're trying to make up for lost time. Relief replaced his disappointment. Take all the time you need. I want you to be sure. About Vermont. About us. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out the wooden box again. Among the old notes and photographs, I found one I hadn't noticed before, a picture of Daniel and me sitting on a hillside, looking out at the mountains of Vermont. On the back, in Daniel's teenage handwriting, someday we'll come back here. Someday this will be home. I traced the words, feeling the weight of a promise made by two people who had no idea what lay ahead of them. How much would be lost? How much would need to be rebuilt? The next morning, I called my boss at the community center. I need to talk to you about a potential career change, I began. 3 months later, I stood on that same Vermont hillside captured in the photograph, watching as construction began on the green community complex. Beside me, Daniel reviewed details with the architects, his face animated with purpose. My parents' bookstore, now expanded to include a cafe and reading center, would be part of the larger community hub we were building. They had finally shared their full history with close friends and neighbors, finding not judgment but support and admiration for their courage. Having regrets? Daniel asked, coming to stand beside me as the construction team began marking the foundation. No, I said honestly. Just thinking about how life circles back sometimes. How things that seem broken beyond repair can become something new. He slipped his arm around my waist. We lost 12 years, Eliza. But we have all the rest ahead of us. I leaned into him, watching as the future we once dreamed about as teenagers began taking physical shape before us. It wasn't the path we'd planned. It carried the scars of all we'd endured. But perhaps that made it stronger, more meaningful than the innocent dreams we'd once shared. The foundation looked solid, I observed as the workers poured the concrete that would support everything to come. Daniel smiled, understanding my meaning beyond the literal construction. Yes, he agreed, pressing a kiss to my temple. Yes, it does. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories about second chances, the healing power of truth, and the possibility that sometimes, what seems like an ending is really just the beginning of something stronger and more beautiful than we ever imagined. Remember that even the longest separations and deepest secrets can't destroy love that was meant to endure. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.